process along the way and see what your viewers think. Let me go ahead and put in my website here. So I'm at decisionpoint.com. We have two newsletters that we do. The first one, our cornerstone, is the Decision Point Alert. It basically gives you the trend and condition of the market in general. We look at all of our exclusive indicators, including the Silver Cross Index and Golden Cross Index, which we recently came up with. And you'll get not only the market, but you'll get Bitcoin, dollar, gold, crude oil. We cover all of those, including gold miners and yields and bonds. So all of that is going to be in the Decision Point Alert. And then we have Decision Point Diamonds, where I give you 10 stock and ETF picks per week. ETF day is on Wednesday, so don't worry if you're not a stock trader, you can still get information out of Decision Point Diamonds with 3 ETFs per week. My subscription prices are very, very low. Right now, I have the Decision Point Alert is only $50 a month, and Decision Point Diamonds are only $80 a month. Currently, we do offer a bundle for the two of them that will save you some money, but I will tell you the bundle will soon be going away, and we will be releasing a new scan alert service, which I hope to discuss on some other Analyze Your Trade programs. So that is what we have right now as far as what you can get. We're going to concentrate on what I do in Decision Point Diamonds, because as part of Diamonds, I do have an exclusive live trading room that is only for subscribers only. So it's a nice small room. We get to everybody's symbol requests. We cover a lot. We also uncover new stock symbols and a sector to watch and an industry group to watch. Lots going on in Decision Point Diamonds in our exclusive Friday trading room. So another reason you might want to consider a Decision Point Diamond subscription. So that's my salesy part, and I'll do a little more salesiness at the end of it. But for now, it's time to go ahead and start looking at some symbols. Hello to everyone. Okay, so I will watch for some symbols. In the meantime, I will tell you that one of the stocks I was looking at this morning was Edison, and here's why. So here is the, this is the conventional electricity group, and I've been noticing some good action going on this this particular industry group. So what I did was I dug down into it, and I did find a stock that I liked. This is going to be a good opportunity for me to explain how I do my analysis. So this is my daily chart. This is where most of the work is done. I include the RSI. It tells me whether price is overbought or oversold. And that gives you a pretty good feel for what's going on with the stock itself if price is overbought. Right now, price is a little bit overbought on Edison, but we did just get a nice little breakout above this trading range that we've seen for quite some time. So I like utilities right now. I know it's not a sexy place to be, but with the market looking a little bit like it might have a problem here, I think it's going to stumble again. And I think rotation is going to continue to move into some of these defensive sectors like healthcare and utilities. The other parts of my chart, I have the PMO, my price momentum oscillator. It's very similar to the PPO or MACD. It gives us a really good read on what's happening with momentum. And as you can see with Edison, momentum has been going very well for it, continues to be going well for it. We had 2 PMO surges above the signal line that really told us we should expect more upside, and that's what we're getting. I also include the on balance volume so I can get kind of an idea of volume patterns. We want to see rising bottoms on the OBV to match with rising bottoms on price. That's a positive, or that's a confirmation. I also include stochastics. This gives me my internal strength, tells me kind of what's going on internally. It does tend to not be a lagging indicator, which is why I like stochastics. They're a little bit quicker to react. And then I like to do what I call a relative strength study. So I look at the industry group against the S&P. I look at the stock against the S&P, but then I look at the stock versus the industry group it's in. So this tells me if I'm getting a stock that's showing leadership within the group. And right now I like this group. The group is outperforming the S&P, and Edison is a great leader within this group. And so it's consequently outperforming the S&P like the group is as well. But this is a good setup here. You want to see relative strength lines rising. So that's kind of how I do this. Then I go to a 5-minute candlestick chart. This is where the trading occurs. I use a 5-minute candlestick chart with my 5-minute RSI and 5-minute PMO. I also have the 5-minute OBV, but I'll admit I don't use this quite as much as these two. So this is where I go for my entries and exits, is on a 5-minute candlestick chart. The conservative entry, let me get my inspect tool up here. The conservative entry is when the PMO crosses above its signal line and you have a positive RSI. That's kind of your go sign to go ahead and get in. Typically, this is going to get you in at a better time than most other times during the day. The sell point is when the PMO turns down. That's all you need to know to get a sell point. Now, unfortunately, the PMO turned down after the big gap down here, but typically it's going to get you out near the top of the price range. So this is where I use the 5-minute candle. There's also what I would call more aggressive entries, where you could enter on a turning of the PMO. You could enter on a positive RSI, or any combination of those two. You don't necessarily have to wait for the crossover. Right now, this looks pretty good, although I think I would hold off just probably another 5-10 minutes, because this is a filled black candlestick right now, and that is a bearish candlestick. So we might get ourselves a little bit better of a buy point by waiting around. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I see 2 symbols to begin with. And feel free to put in symbols you've already looked at. I'm kind of curious if I'm in line with what other people have been saying. So here's our first one. The first thing I look at is the PMO, and unfortunately the PMO here looks really bad. We have a top beneath the signal line. That's especially bearish. The PMO was unable to rise to its overbought territory as well. So there's weak momentum going on here. The RSI is negative. Stochastics are rising slightly, so we could be seeing a possible turn coming up, but that's really not the kind of stochastics I want to see. I like to see these big moves to the upside. That's what we're looking for. We're not really getting that here on this one. Relative strength-wise, the group is struggling. The stock is struggling against the S&P, and it's not even a good performer within the group. So the group is really struggling here. I don't like the look of this stock. I also like to look at a weekly chart. Let me get a weekly chart. The weekly chart does not look bad, though. So in the intermediate term, this one isn't terrible. But I have to say, looking at that daily chart, you're probably going to have to absorb some downside before you're going to get some upside. But this is a positive, the fact that price is staying above this area of prior overhead resistance. So the weekly chart looks pretty good, but I have to say I'm not a fan. Oh, wait, this is Dow Industrials. Let's try that again. Okay, here we go. Yes, this is not a good weekly chart. So our daily chart isn't good and our weekly chart isn't good. Notice that PMO, the weekly PMO is top beneath its signal line. This is not a good stock. This is a stock I might consider as a possible short, not a possible buy. And if that were the case, when would I want to get into this thing? When the PMO tops, if I'm going for a short. And at this point, the PMO is rising. So we're not quite at a buy point as far as a short sell would go, short sale. All right, so that is that one. Now we're getting tons of symbols in here, so hopefully I can get to as many as possible. All right, Vertex. I like the biotechs. You can see right here, biotechs have been outperforming the market and they continue to, which I like. This is a nice look, making new highs as it goes along. The issue is it is overbought right now, and the PMO is very overbought right now. So it really is begging for a pullback right now. Stochastics are strong though, above 80, performing better than the S&P, so I'll take that. But I have to say, I think this one still has some upside available, but it is very overbought. So I don't know that I would necessarily be a buyer here. If I owned it, I would definitely be holding it. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. But I just think it's kind of overbought. Unfortunately, a lot of the stocks we're going to look at are going to be overbought because of the rally out of October. But there are some that aren't overbought, and we're going to want to try and seek those out if we can. All right, so I think this looks pretty good. Let's look at the weekly chart. And it is making new all-time highs as we speak. So we've got a very strong stock here. If we wanted to get in, the 5-minute candlestick chart tells us we are at a buy point. The PMO has turned up. We don't have the crossover yet, but we do have a positive RSI. This tells me that we are at the buy point. We do have a declining trend going on here, so it'd be nice to get a little pop out of that declining trend to confirm what we're seeing here. But overall, I'd say you're at a buy point for Vertex. All right. Church and Dwight, I think, CHD. Church and Dwight, all right. Okay, let me get my bearings here. A little bit of a sideways trading going on here, but we are getting a nice little cup-shaped base. RSI is positive and the PMO is accelerating now above the signal line. That does look like a surge. A surge is when the PMO bottoms above the signal line, and that's what we have here. This is occurring above the 0 line, so that's good. Excuse me, stochastics are rising. Give me a moment. Need a little water. I'm going to be talking nonstop here. Stochastics look good as they're rising. They turned back up in positive territory, so I like that. Relative strength, not the best as far as going against the group, but it is outperforming the S&P somewhat here. So I'd have to say Church and Dwight, it is in the consumer staples area, which I like right now. Those defensive sectors, I think, are going to perform well for us. A little bit of a flag formation going on. I like CHD. Let's look at the weekly. The weekly chart looks great. We're getting a new PMO buy signal coming in, and the RSI is positive. I would like to see a stock charts technical rank that was rising a little more quickly than what we're seeing here. The stock charts technical rank really gives you a good idea of how the stock measures up in the intermediate to long terms. So if the trend and condition is working for it, you're going to see the stock charts technical rank start to rise. So I do like to include it on a weekly chart just to give me a sense of intermediate to long-term strength. We are seeing it improving, but it really could be in a better spot. But this is an early move based on the fact that PMO is just now giving us that crossover. We go to a 5-minute chart. We are at the buy point. The PMO has given us a positive crossover and the RSI is positive. All right, EME. All right, EME, heavy construction. Let's see. PMO is starting to turn over, but look at this price action. It's kind of rainbowish. It looks like a top. This doesn't look like a good base for a nice rally. It is holding above its 50-day EMA mostly. Yeah, I'm not really thrilled with this stock, mainly because of this price pattern. That bothers me a bit, but it is holding support right now, and the RSI did get positive, PMO turning up. relative strength against the group is improving, but it's not really doing much against the S&P. In fact, it is kind of in a declining trend here versus the S&P. So I'd have to say I'm lukewarm on this one. Certainly worth a hold. I'd probably set my stop just below this support level because I don't think I'd want it if it can't maintain itself above the 50-day EMA like it's struggling to do so. Weekly chart. Looks like a double top is forming, so I'm not a fan of this one. You can also see that the PMO is in decline. Stock chart's technical rank may be rising here, but that really ugly PMO, possible double top, tells me this is not a stock that I'd want to be involved in. BRPHF. All right. This is a fairly low volume stock, so keep that in mind. RSI positive, PMO is in decline. And I will tell you something right out the gate. I trust my PMO more than I trust any indicator that I have. We came up with the PMO. Like I said, it's very much like the MACD and the PPO, but I trust my PMO more than anything. And if the PMO is moving lower, I'm not going to get into the stock. I typically will not buy any stock where the PMO is turning down. It is decelerating, but not enough for my taste. This is a good move coming off of the 20-day EMA, but it did lose it this time. And that's some pretty hefty selling that we saw going into what we're going into. This is very much like the market. And I'm not really that thrilled with what's going on in the market. This tells me this one's probably going to turn back down. Stochastic's rising, so I can see why you're interested in this in the short term, but that PMO turning down and that heavy selling that we just saw keep me from wanting to be involved in this one. Quickly looking at a weekly chart. Weekly chart does look pretty good here, though. You've got a kind of a cup-shaped bottom here, which is a good base. And the breakout did occur above this level, and price is holding above that breakout point. So maybe the daily chart doesn't look as appetizing to me, but I have to say the weekly chart doesn't look bad and certainly confirms that this would be a good hold. Okay, BRT. I'm going to skip the 5-minute charts unless I really like the stock, and then we'll go and look at the 5-minute charts. All right, nice little rally here coming off of that small decline, a little different than the last chart we looked at. RSI positive, and this time the PMO is headed higher, as are stochastics. Look at how it's outperforming its group. This is causing it to outperform the S&P, even though the group is not doing what we really want it to do. So I do like this one. It looks ready for a breakout, but let's go ahead and take a peek at the weekly chart. The weekly chart is not as positive, so keep this in the short-term time frame. That weekly PMO is in decline. We do see the OBV is rising, so we're getting some confirmation on this rally, but I would just be very careful here given that PMO is in decline. Keep this short-term. And 5-minute chart. We are not at a buy point. The sell point came in back here at this top. The last buy point was back here with the positive RSI, the PMO crossover. So that would have gotten you in right around here. Your sell point would have been right about here. So you can day trade off of these 5-minute candlesticks if you wish. I don't like to put a whole lot of indicators on my charts. I really think that you don't need too many indicators. It's better if you have fewer and you learn them inside and out. All right, so not a bad 5-minute chart, but we definitely, it looks like we could get a better buy point here. Although I must say, price from this level to over here didn't really move much, and the PMO was in decline that whole time. So price strength is still there. So I would still like to see a PMO rising before I got into this on my buy point, but I could see an entry here too. Amazon. looking a lot like the market, as it should, given that it kind of leads the market among the Magnificent Seven. All right, we have a positive RSI. We have a nice little rally going on. We have a PMO that's just turned up and stochastics that have just turned up. And notice the relative strength lines are all starting to pick up here. So this looks pretty good for Amazon. Might be an early bit of the move, but again, Amazon is tied very much to what the market and overall is going to do. And again, I'm still not convinced that this is the bottom, that we're going to end up, making new all-time highs out of this bottom. So I would be very careful about, at this point, deploying any new open positions, just because I think the market is overbought and we do still have some problems ahead for us. But Amazon's chart, if I were looking at this, in a bull market, which I am, I have to say it does look pretty good right now for Amazon. Let's look at that weekly chart and then we'll check the 5-minute. All righty. Positive RSI, weekly RSI. Weekly PMO is trying to turn up. It had turned down. And just with this little rally that we're getting this week, it's already starting to decelerate. So that's a good sign. And notice that the stock chart rank just moved above 70. I call 70 and above the hot zone. If you're in the hot zone, like you can see back here, it was in the hot zone this whole time, and you can see that most of this move was rally. We did end up seeing this decline in here while the scooter was above the 70 line, but typically you want to have it above there. It's going to give you some idea of where it's going to go in the future. And right now, Amazon's looking pretty good here with that scooter moving back into the hot zone. Let's see what we have as a 5-minute chart. And the 5-minute chart looking pretty good here, but we do have a possible better buy point that we could get into. A lot of decline going on here, and the PMO is also in decline. So that tells me we're still going to have some lower prices, which means a better buy point. RSI just moved negative as well. So we can wait for the PMO to get even more oversold. And hopefully we'll get a turn on it so that we could get in on it today, but there might be a wait till tomorrow before you can get in on it at the best buy point. Bank of America, BAC. All right. Not good. RSI did drop out of overbought territory, which is good, and is still sitting in positive territory above that net neutral 50. But this PMO is very overbought and it is turned down and it's given us a sell signal. Stochastics are moving lower. Look at the relative strength. Now, remember on the other one, you could see relative strength ticking straight up. In this case, it's ticking straight down on relative strength. There's some definite weakness going on here. I would not be a buyer of this one. I think you would want to set that stop. Let's see if you own it. Probably tighten it up to this area here, that support gap, that gap support area. So anywhere from like 4.7% to possibly 3%, somewhere in there would be a good stop level. But I would not be a buyer here. And just to take a peek at the weekly chart, it doesn't look bad. We definitely see some possibilities here. I see a double bottom. So in the intermediate term, it doesn't look too bad for Bank of America. I would just say in the short term, the short-term traders that you are in here, probably not going to be your best bet to take advantage of any upside coming ahead. I think you can do better. STTK. Biotechs, which I did say I like. All right, so this is pretty much about as overbought as you can get. PMO is extraordinarily overbought. This is kind of a weird price pattern here. Clearly something happened and it's really moving it. I don't know what Shattuck Labs does, but it must have had some kind of a big announcement, and it is headed straight upward. It's really overbought. I would be putting a trailing stop on this one, just to preserve any profit. I don't think I would be entering here. Certainly it could have another big move to the upside, but boy, this is so overbought. It looks like it's ready for a pretty good sized pullback. Keep it on the watch list though. This one could be interesting off of a pullback like we just saw back here. But at this point, I don't think I'd be opening this as a new position just because it is so very overbought. But if you're in it, congratulations. Set that trailing stop. I don't know, whatever your depth is that you like. Typically, I'll set a trailing stop right around the 8 or 10% area as it follows me upward. That PMO did surge above the signal line. So I think there is more upside here. I just have to wonder how much more and getting involved in this so late. Weekly is going to be weird looking. Now this one's had some very high prices, so it isn't out of the question that it could rise back up to this level here where we had close to where the initial public offering was, and that's about a 75% gain. So, well, maybe you might want to take a little bit of a chance on it, but I would just tell you that I don't know, what was this decline back here? That was a 21% decline from this close to that close. So this is what I would call a boom or bust stock. Either it's going to boom and you're just going to make tons of money, or it's going to bust and you're going to lose probably more than you wanted to on the position. So really get comfortable with your risk appetite when you're talking about a boom or bust stock. MGM. Don't like it. There's some good stuff going on the chart, but this PMO is a big problem. It's turned back down. We now have a sell signal going on here. RSI staying positive and stochastics are still rising in positive territory. And it is still outperforming the SPY, but this one just looks like it's ready to make the turn to the downside, not something that I would get involved in to the upside. I mean, look at how overbought the PMO is. It's tends to travel in a range, it looks like, between -5 and +5, and we're pretty much near +5 here with a sell signal. So I don't think that I would be too happy to be involved with this one. Now, if I owned it, I would keep it for a little longer, set my stop probably about 4%. But this would keep me with my finger over the sell button because I don't want to get caught in a big decline. But you still got some positiveness going on the chart, still rising trend in terms of the way it's performing against the S&P. So, little interesting look. I'd call it a hold. I don't know that I'd want to be involved just because of the way that PMO looks. Weekly chart. Weekly chart is positive. We have the rising PMO and OBV is confirming this rally. Certainly some more upside available to about 14% upside potential. But like I said, I think short term, this one looks like it's ready for a decline. And but the weekly chart's positive enough that I could definitely see holding it a little bit longer. All right, next up, UNG. Ah, yes. Oh my goodness. Of course. So funny story, maybe funny to you, not as funny to me, but I've been holding on to natural gas. Well, let's look at the weekly chart here. I've been holding on to natural gas pretty much all year and went into this decline, broke down, and I decided that, you know what, I'm going to sell to take advantage for taxes because I have a pretty big loss here. I'm just going to sell it and take advantage. Of course, if I'd stayed in with this particular rally, I would be definitely happy. but I can't get back in until the end of this month. So I have to watch helplessly from the sidelines as UNG finally makes its move to the upside. I think there's more upside to be had here. This is a parabolic move though, so getting involved in it now, it's a bit on the late side. But I do like the way the PMO is rising. RSI is now overbought. So it's almost a boom or bust situation for UNG as well. Stochastics have turned down despite this move to the upside, which gives me a little bit of concern here for UNG. Let's see, it did break above this level of support though, which is very, very positive. And I would see and move to the top of the trading range as possible, and that's a 21% gain. So if you have a risk reward profile or risk profile that would allow you to absorb some serious downside, because UNG has not been, it's had a lot of starts and stops. But this, I have to say, looks the best it's looked in a very, very long time. Definitely a hold. Could possibly get involved, but just make sure you set that stop so that you don't get caught on too much of a deep decline, as this parabolic will probably fail and bring price back down toward that 50-day EMA. So I think there's still some more upside to be had here, but that parabolic formation tells me that we do have a decline or a pullback that we'll have to absorb first. All right. If you did want to get into UNG, if you're feeling like you can handle any of that downside, it doesn't look like you've got a buy point yet. Although we've had this decline and now we're starting to see some upward movement here by UNG, and the RSI has turned up. But I think that I would still be waiting for that PMO to, at the very least, start decelerating its decline. And it's not doing that. And look at the heavy selling that we've got here too. So I think there is some profit taking probably going on here. And we might see a bit more profit taking. So I don't know that this is your best entry. All right. Oh, you're very welcome for the CHD analysis. Why do I use the moving averages? Okay, so I'm guessing that I use the 50-day and 200-day. Let's get the next symbol up so I can talk about this. FRI. Oh, the earnings is Friday. Never mind. QS. So let me talk a little bit about those moving averages. So we like to include a 20-day, a 50-day, and a 200-day exponential moving averages. We like exponential moving averages because they put more emphasis on near-term data than late-term data. When you use a regular simple moving average, you are subject to the drop-off effect, which is you have a big day and it finally comes to the end of the data set and it drops off. And then that changes the whole look of the moving average because a big day just dropped off. So we like to not have that as an issue. We like to use EMAs. Now, what you may be talking to me about, and I'll come back to this daily chart, is on the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, let's get this to be log scale. On the weekly chart, we use a 17-week and a 43-week EMA. This really is kind of picked because it mimics the 50 and the 200-day EMAs on the daily chart. So coming up with those particular parameters, we found that that was the best way to sort of transfer the 50 and 200-day onto a weekly chart. And of course, for the 5-minute chart, I do have 2 EMAs here, but as you've noticed, I don't really pay too much attention to those. All right, so back to the daily chart for QS. All right, and you're welcome for the symbol requests. I appreciate your thanks. So auto parts. Looking at the auto parts relative strength, we're starting to see some decline in relative strength. You can see right there. So that kind of has me a bit concerned right out the gate. And then you can also notice relative strength is starting to pare back for QS. But RSI is positive and the PMO is still rising. Let's see here. Flag formation. I can see this on the pullback, but notice stochastics topped below 80. That suggests to me that maybe it's not ready for this reversal. And the PMO is starting to decelerate a little bit. So while I could see an entry here, it's not my favorite stock that we've looked at today. And the weekly chart is looking positive. So this could be considered in the intermediate term. I would just be careful. It looks like more pullback might be coming ahead. And for the 5-minute chart, if you wanted to enter, the entry is coming in just about now because you can see that PMO, 5-minute PMO has turned up. It hasn't been turned up since back here at that last buy point that came in, but this is looking like obviously a better buy point with the 5-minute PMO starting to rise. All right, UNH, and then it looks like we're coming to the end of our symbol requests. You guys need to add some more in here for me. I can run a quick scan and see what I can come up with to look at, or we can do some drill down maybe. Cup with handle shape. PMO rising, I like that. Putting some margin between it and its signal line. Stochastics did top below 80 though, which is not a good look. And relative strength is fading for this particular stock. But I do like the cup with handle, RSI positive, PMO rising, like I said. So I think that this still has some opportunity as a possible entry with this pullback. Let's look at the weekly chart. Weekly chart. Well, we're getting a PMO surging above the signal line. It's trying to anyway. It hasn't actually turned back up, it doesn't look like. Stock chart's technical rank is rising and is almost in the hot zone. I'd say this one looks good for a breakout. And if we wanted to enter this, 5-minute PMO just turned over, as is price turning over. So we're at a sell point right now, not a buy point. I would love to try and get this one closer to this level. And with the PMO topping, there's a pretty good chance we might get it at least back down into negative territory as a possible buy point. Hey, thank you, Karen. I think that's you giving the Diamonds Trading Room a thumbs up. All right, FNV. Yeah, I'm used to getting through as many symbol requests as possible. I do a free trading room on Mondays that you can attend via Zoom. The best way to get to that free trading room is to go to our homepage and click on register now. This is how you can register to be in the Monday trading room. The Zoom link does not change. So once you get the room ID, you can use that same room ID every week on Mondays. And I do basically what I'm doing now, except I do I have my father Carl joins me. And what we do is we look at the market in general. Then I look at a sector to watch. I look for an industry group to watch. We dive down and see what other stocks we can get. And I do this in both the free trading room as well as in more detail and get more stocks in the Friday trading room that's part of the Decision Point Diamonds. And if you like the chat, we do have a chat room in both trading rooms that are pretty active, that you might enjoy talking to other traders and seeing what they're thinking about and what stocks they're looking at. All right, back to FNV. PMO topping beneath the zero line. That is a no-go right out the gate. You can also see a lot of other things not going right on this chart. Stochastics are now below 20. You can see that the relative strength is moving lower in most cases here. We have a little bit of a rise of relative strength against the group, but it's not doing much for it as the relative strength continues to move lower. This is not a stock that I would want to be involved in. My finger would probably be over the sell button right now on this. If you wanted to hold it a little longer, you could put another maybe a 5.25% stop on there. But personally, I don't think I'd want to absorb another 5% loss on a stock that I'm almost certain is going to hit that 5% loss. So let's go to the 5-minute chart after the weekly. And you can see the weekly chart is also very negative right now. So we don't want to be involved in this in even the intermediate term. But I can see watch listing this one mainly because it's at the bottom of a very tall trading list or trading range. I think that this could be a really interesting one if we get a reversal off this 100 level once again. So might be worth a watch list to keep an eye on this weekly chart because that's the kind of stock I want to be involved in is when something like this happens, when we hit support and start making our way back up. And you can see the PMO will definitely give us, alert us to that. And this is a gold miner. I didn't even look. And so this is not surprising me. Gold miners are struggling a little bit here. We'll look at the gold miner chart in just a moment. Buy point. Now you can see we've had a rising PMO this whole time and price has done nothing. This is another sign of a very weak stock. We were looking at gold miners. So let's look at gold miners in general really quickly here. So one of the things that we do at Decision Point is we have a number of industry groups. We have all the sectors and the major market indexes, and we do these under the hood charts so that you can see what's going on under the hood. It gives you a much better sense of what's happening internally on these sectors and groups. And right now, looking at the gold miner group under the hood, I do see a little bit of movement here in stocks above their 20 and their 50-day EMAs. So all is not lost here for gold miners, but I have to say losing that 200-day EMA as support, knowing how weak gold is looking, knowing that the market is highly likely to turn back down, gold miners are not the place I would want to be. And look at the PMO is in decline. We also have our Silver Cross and Golden Cross indexes. I could spend a whole program talking to you about those, but ultimately the Silver Cross index is dropping beneath its signal line. So now we have a bearish bias in the intermediate term on gold miners. So I would be very careful with gold miners. If you haven't sold them yet, honestly, I would be looking to sell. I had a gold miner. I fortunately got rid of it before this big decline here. Was kicking myself all the way up here, but now I don't feel so stupid. I feel pretty happy. The rising trend hasn't quite been broken. And like I said, we're seeing a little bit of action here under the surface. So all is not lost for gold miners, but I don't know that I'd want to be holding on and or getting in just yet. I think there's still more downside ahead. Okay. Do I analyze commodities? I do gold. That's kind of about the extent of it, and crude oil. Let's see here. Here is GLD. Actually, let's look at this one. So GLD is, gold is posing a problem right now. The dollar is showing some strength, trying to break out of a declining trend. And this is putting downside pressure on gold. So I would, again, we're looking at gold miners. If gold is going to be struggling, then gold miners are likely going to have that downside pressure put upon them. And I don't like what's going on with gold right now. It is sitting above the 50-day EMA, but that PMO is on a sell signal and stochastics are falling. One piece of good news that I'm noticing, though, is we study the discounts and premiums for the physical gold trust. And this, by doing this, the higher the discounts you have, the more bearish the investors are. So by looking at these discounts, notice right now they're starting to pull back a little bit. And that does tell me that people are getting a little bit more bullish on gold. So we'll want to keep an eye on it for possible reversal. I just think it's got a little bit more downside to go. All right. FNV Microsoft is where we're at now. All right. Lots of good things being said about Microsoft these days and AI. PMO is starting to turn up here, RSI positive, stochastics rising strongly. I like that. This is a bit of a problem. Relative strength to the group is failing, which is interesting because, you know, Microsoft tends to hold that leadership role. It's still kind of outperforming the S&P, more trading in line with it, which isn't a surprise. The S&P is tied very closely to Microsoft and Google and Apple and the rest of the Magnificent Seven. But I do notice some relative strength bleeding off here, which is a little bit of a problem. Price has been moving mostly sideways. I mean, the PMO is getting ready to turn up, but again, I'm still not really feeling that good about the market in general. And that's going to put a little bit of downside pressure, I would think, on Microsoft. But for now, I think it looks fairly healthy and bouncing off of this 50-day EMA. Let's look at the weekly chart and get a better look. Now I see a flag formation on the weekly chart. RSI is positive, but look at that PMO on the weekly. It really does suggest that we're going to have a little bit more pullback ahead of us. And like I said, with the market looking weak, I think that this is probably going to be a problem for Microsoft. But overall, I'd say short term possible. I'll be honest, when I look at this, I feel very neutral. I can't say that I'd be a buyer here, but I don't think I'd be a seller either. This is a pretty nice looking formation. It's just, this is really unexciting movement on the price. It's just not doing much right now. 2 good days of rally, though. We'll have to see where we go from here. If you are interested in Microsoft, let's go ahead and look at that 5-minute candlestick chart so we can see where we would want to enter and where we might want to exit. Looks like this is about the best buy point we're going to get. The PMO is in decline, but we're not losing a lot of price strength here. So that tells me that even though the PMO is declining and will possibly continue to decline, we're not losing price strength, so we're probably not going to get a better buy point today. It is staying in positive territory, so that's a good sign. But I would say if you wanted to wait around just a little bit longer to see if you can't get in at this level, that would be good. But overall, I mean, I think that it looks decent. But I have to say I'm feeling very neutral about Microsoft right now. NVIDIA, getting all of these Magnificent Seven stocks here. Really nice breakout on NVIDIA. This has a much better look than what we were looking at on Microsoft. This looks like pure strength. We've got a PMO that's given us a crossover buy signal above the 0 line. Stochastics are back above 80. This looks really good for NVIDIA. But it's our RSI is overbought. So we are on the overbought side here for NVIDIA. Could use a pullback. So like I said, with the market being a little weird right now, I'm still looking for a decline in the market to come. I think we will end up seeing a pullback, which would give you a much better entry on NVIDIA. But if you aren't, you know, if you don't mind absorbing about a 5% possible pullback, well, 3, 4, maybe a 4% pullback on a purchase now, you could do that. But I think I'd like to try and wait for a little bit more pullback here on NVIDIA, but it looks pretty darn good. Certainly be happy if I owned it. Look at the shooting right up into all-time highs. The 5-minute PM, I mean, the weekly PMO is rising nicely. I like that little tick to the upside, and look at the strength here on that stock chart's technical rank. This one looks good for the intermediate and long term. I just think in the very short term, you're going to be looking at a pullback coming up in the next day or two, which would offer probably a better entry on NVIDIA. But if you owned it, I think you can set a stop and not worry too hard about it. But I would set that stop at least at 5%, because what we were looking at is a possible pullback of about 3% is what I'm thinking of on NVIDIA. Dell. Nice breakout, pulling back today after the breakout. So mechanical breakout pullback. We like to see that. RSI positive, PMO rising. I like that look. We've got stochastics above 80 still. No, they're not above 80. So they're looking a little bit weak. But look at the relative strength here. I really like the look of that. Relative strength to the group is rising. Relative strength against the SPY is rising. These are all good signs here. And I would have to say, I like that pullback. So this one looks pretty good, even though it is lost about 2.5% today. I think that offers you a really good entry. Let's go to the weekly, and then we'll look at that 5-minute chart. Making all-time highs. All right, so the weekly PMO is in decline and has given us a crossover sell signal, but Scooter is still in really good territory. The RSI is a bit on the overbought side. So this is a little bit of concerning when I look at the weekly chart, but the short-term look is awfully good on it. I think you can look for some more upside here. The weekly chart tells me we may want to keep this in the shorter term, though. 5-minute chart. I would say we're at a pretty good buy point coming in here, an aggressive one, albeit. The PMO is still not rising on the 5-minute chart, but notice it is decelerating. And this does look like a pretty nice little bounce here on Dell. So I have to say it's not a bad buy point. Could end up seeing some more upside here. It's a big decline. I think it got overdone. So I think this might be a good buy point coming in on Dell. We looked at Microsoft, so I'll skip that one. VXF, small and mid caps ETF. All right, looks a lot like the S&P. Big decline started on December 31st, or not the 31st, was it? It was the 30th. Or the 29th even, I can't remember now. But we did get that big decline that started at the beginning, the very end of last year and into this year. Now we're seeing a bit of a rally coming back out. Again, looks very much like the market. This is a problem. PMO is in decline, so I would not be a buyer here simply for that fact. But stochastics are rising. I can see why you would be interested in this, and the RSI is positive. Momentum is working against it though, so that would take it off my list as a buy. I don't see anything terrible enough to be a seller just yet. I probably want that stop tightened right under this support level, about 2.5%. So if you wanted to get involved and maybe put in a 2.5%, 3% stop, to protect yourself, you could, but that might get hit. I'd say if I owned it, I'd probably set that stop at about 3%. And that would, I think, protect me from any pullback that we might get off of this declining PMO. But I'm not really a fan of this chart in the short term. Looks better in the intermediate term with the PMO rising, and RSI is positive as well. Scooter is in the hot zone above 70. So we are seeing that pullback came back to this very strong level of support. So we could be looking at another reversal to the upside for small and mid caps. I would just be very careful because in the very short term, things aren't looking that good for the market in general, and small and mid caps will get hit every bit as hard as the larger caps. Okay, I did UNH. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're almost done. I've got 2 more to look at. So what information are you obtaining from your indicators that you cannot discern from your price charts? I'm not exactly sure what the question is. I'm not sure exactly the question, so I'm happy to answer question, but I don't know exactly what you mean because I'm looking at price charts with indicators on them. All right, AA. Feel free to throw any other questions in because once I finish with Oracle, I will be closing shop. All right, aluminum, PMO in decline, nearing a sell signal, so that's a no-go. Stochastics in decline as well. Don't like it. RSI is positive, so maybe we'll get that reversal off of a 50-day EMA, but boy, this overbought PMO sell signal tells me no-go. Let's go to Oracle so that I at least get a look at everybody's. PMO topping for a second time beneath the signal line, well below the 0 line. This is a no-go. Don't like this one. No, not for entry either. Not PMO topping beneath the signal line. Pretty much does it for me, but then you add these other negative indicators in and, well, there you have it. All right. One more came in. We'll look at Twilio and then we will do our little salesiness and pass it back. I like the reversal here, but the PMO is still, it decelerated on this reversal, but it never really turned up. And it should have, in my opinion. 2 strong days of rally just tells you the forcefulness of that decline. I mean, I could see an entry here, but I don't know. I'm not really thrilled with this one based on that just heavy decline that we saw. And the fact the PMO just hasn't quite turned back up. All right, back to decisionpoint.com. Please come and visit us. And as I said, I have the 2 different subscriptions that you can do. They're very inexpensive. I really would love to see you at least try us out. So I do have a coupon code that I'm going to put into the chat box. Basically, if you want to try us out for 2 free weeks, you can use the coupon code that I just put into the chat box, DP trial and the number 2. Highly recommend you try us. I mean, it's not an expensive subscription. We cover a ton of information in both of these. I know there was one testimonial in the chat area. I know I brought some more people here to watch, and I'm sure they can give you good words and real-time compliments on our website. But at the very least, go ahead and subscribe to our free newsletter. As I said, I'm getting ready to drop a new service, the scan alert service, which is going to give you all of my the results from all of my exclusive DP scans that I run to come up with my diamonds in the rough. So you'll get all of those symbols to check out for yourself. But the scan alert service is not going to launch probably for another month. So you'll need to sign up here on our homepage to get more information about that. If you are a short-term trader, that scan alert service is going to be golden for you. And diamonds are certainly a place I would love to see you in my trading room on Fridays. If you like what I did today, then definitely sign up and register for my free trading room that I do on Mondays in Zoom. All right, David, I think that pretty much covers it for me. Appreciate all of your time. Looks like I'm sitting in the dark here. Didn't mean for that to happen. All right, thank you all for attending and checking out decisionpoint.com.